Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. Manchester City moved within 2 points of league leaders Liverpool with a crushing win over Arsenal. How did they do it? Where did Arsenal go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to briefly break down how Manchester City beat Arsenal. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the first half, see how both sides like to approach the game and how City were able to find openings behind the Arsenal backline. Then move to the second half and see how Manchester City were able to kill off the game. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We look at City, more of a 4-3-3. They had Sterling, Aguero, and Bernardo Silva up front. In midfield, Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne, and David Silva. Then we move to Arsenal, more of a 4-4-2. Lacazette and Aubameyang up front. In the wider areas, Kolasinac and Iwobi, and in midfield, Guendouzi and Lucas Torreira. So now let's look to the first half, see how both sides look to approach the game, and how Manchester City were able to get in behind Arsenal's backline. So when we look at the opening half, one of the key themes has to be Manchester City's shape with and without the ball. With the ball, they did look like more, without the ball, they looked more like a 4-3-3 that was eventually a 4-5-1 as players dropped off deeper to ensure that they kept their shape. But for the most part, they were on the ball in that first half. And what happened is that 4-5-1 or that 4-3-3 eventually turned into a 3-2-4-1 because what happened was that when City gained control of possession, what we ended up seeing was Fernandinho dropping or pushing forward into midfield with Gundogan. We saw De Bruyne and we saw David Silva push a bit higher, and we saw Raheem Sterling and Bernardo Silva hold the wide areas. What happened now was that Arsenal obviously had to retreat because with the back three, you had Laporte on the left, Walker on the right, Otamendi in the central, and we ended up seeing Lacazette and Aubameyang sitting ahead of Gundogan and Fernandinho to ensure that they couldn't get on the ball. With that being said, the only player in the back three that really got marked out was Walker when Kolasinac stepped to him, but Arsenal dropped off into two narrow banks of four to try to ensure that there was no space between the lines, and they ensured that Gundogan and Fernandinho couldn't dictate the play from deeper areas. What did this mean for Manchester City? Well, they did find different avenues to harm Arsenal. When you think about it, they had De Bruyne. You have the Arsenal backline here. You had Silva kind of occupying in that space between the center backs and the fullbacks, and so was De Bruyne. And with him moving out there, what happened was that City had space in the back to play balls out wide, and Sterling and Bernardo Silva were able to get the balls out to pull the fullbacks into them. And with that being said, that then created spaces in the channels for De Bruyne and Silva to break into. And that's where Guendouzi and you had Tyrrell having to occupy those spaces to ensure that those runners weren't being made. But with that being said, City were able to take the lead early on. It stemmed from a poor mistake from Iwobi where he was trying to beat Laporte at the edge of the box and he lost the ball, and Laporte was able to clip it back into the box for Aguero, free on goal to nod his effort past Leno. Obviously, we saw Arsenal respond quickly from a corner kick. That's how Monreal flick on the near post corner from Tyrrell into Koscielny, who was able to convert from point blank range. But this was more so about City getting in behind that Arsenal backline because Arsenal never really tested Ederson besides that. Yes, they had the opportunity where Kevin De Bruyne was dispossessed by Guendouzi, and it did see Monreal push forward to drag out Bernardo, and he pulled it back, and he pulled it back to Guendouzi, who found Kolasinac between Fernandinho and Walker, but he turned in fire tame for that goal. Then we did see eventually Arsenal break forward again, and that was actually when we saw the De Bruyne get dispossessed. The initial point that I just stated, it was a poor Gundogan pass to Raheem Sterling. Then we saw Guendouzi dispossess Kevin De Bruyne and Arsenal break forward before the ball was slid to Aubameyang, but Otamendi made a vital interception. Besides that, Arsenal never really threatened. This was about City. We looked to a few opportunities where Otamendi clips the ball out to Bernardo Silva, and we see Monreal step to him, and now that sees Kevin De Bruyne in that space where you have Guendouzi, but Kevin De Bruyne is able to just run off and get the poked ball into that space, but his cross into the box was overhit and Sterling was unable to get to it. Shortly after that, we saw De Bruyne drop off a bit deeper and get a pass from Fernandinho, which pulled out Monreal, and we had Bernardo Silva in that narrow space near Guendouzi, and again, he darts into that space to get the poke ball. Guendouzi doesn't track him, but Bernardo's cross into the box was cleared by Lucas Torreira tracking. Shortly after that, we also saw this combination from the left-hand side, where what we would see was that Sterling would get the ball, Lichtsteiner would push forward, and we'd see David Silva like to push into that space. However, on this occasion, what happened was that Sterling had the ball in deeper position. He was able to run and turn past Iwobi, who did try to offer good protection for Lichtsteiner, who is more of a defensive liability nowadays, and he was able to run at Lichtsteiner, and Silva made the dart into that space, but Torreira tracked it well. However, Silva was still able to get across, deflected off Torreira, that Leno had to push away. The final opportunity where we did see this kind of all stem together was when we had Bernardo Silva push out into that space again, and what happens there is that he was able to get a pass out into that space from Gundogan, who clipped it out to him because he had space and time. Monreal stepped to him, and De Bruyne again pushes into that area, and with De Bruyne pushing into that area, Guendouzi, it's so odd that they're unable to continue to track that run when he knows that they're going to make it into the space behind him, and his cross into the box just misses Raheem Sterling breaking into the box. However, City's second goal, where we saw Gundogan make that move there, City's second goal finally saw Arsenal's discipline kind of teeter towards the end of the half, because for most of the first half, we saw Lacazette and Aubameyang sitting in those central zones on Gundogan and Fernandinho. On this one occasion, Lacazette was caught out more so in that right channel, and we saw the ball played out to Fernandinho, and Aubameyang got to him late, but he's able to skip past Aubameyang and clip a diagonal ball out to Raheem Sterling, and Raheem Sterling was able to get onto it, which forced out Lichtsteiner. But again, Gundogan now is able to push forward because he gets the ball back near the edge of the box from Sterling, and he runs off Lichtsteiner to get the ball back in left half space before clipping it through the box, and that evaded both center backs Mustafi and Koscielny for Aguero to tap in, and City were up 2-1 going into head time. But when you break down that half as a whole, yes, Arsenal's two banks of four were there to ensure that City couldn't play through the middle of the pitch. However, City had wide players in those wide areas, and when they weren't there, we even saw Aguero and Kevin De Bruyne drift into that left side space to ensure that they had width. So they were able to play in behind the fullbacks by dragging them out, and the shuttlers were now forced to make those tracking runs for De Bruyne, Bernardo, and David Silva, but City were able to get into dangerous positions, and finally they were able to make Arsenal pay. So now let's get to the second half, see how both sides look to approach the game heading into the final 45 minutes, and how City were able to kill off the game. Unfortunately for Arsenal, there were no significant changes to the second half. We did see City press a bit more aggressively with the wider players in Raheem Sterling and Bernardo Silva pushing out to the fullbacks, with Aguero stepping to one center back and the spare shuttler in David Silva or Kevin De Bruyne stepping to the spare center back, and vice versa. And that did leave Lucas Torreira and Guendouzi to be pressed by the spare midfielder and Gundogan, who was able to push forward and then leave the center backs with Lacazette and Aubameyang. But for the most part, this was still about City, even with Gundogan and Fernandinho pressed out of possession or in possession. What we still had was the City center backs being able to create chances from deep with their passing. The first time we saw Otamendi clip the ball out to Bernardo Silva, and he's able to run at Monreal, and Guendouzi does shift over, but when Guendouzi shifts over, that allows Bernardo to run at them and pull it back for Kevin De Bruyne, who fires a shot on goal. That Leno almost nearly spills for Silva, but he was able to hold on to ensure that the Spaniard was unable to double Manchester City's lead. Shortly after that, we did see Laporte step forward, and this time he finds Silva again, but what Silva does is he's able to drag out Guendouzi, and when he drags out Guendouzi to get the pass, he flicks it instantly to Kevin De Bruyne, who is in a narrow position ahead of Lichtsteiner. He flicks it onto Raheem Sterling. Sterling now is able to run at goal at Lichtsteiner, but De Bruyne again again, as we saw in the first half, making that run in behind the fullback to get the poked ball in left half space, but he quickly fires a shot that Leno's able to hold on to. When we get the build up to the goal, this time it's from Gundogan, who was closed down for large portions of the first half or the opening hour, as was Fernandinho. This time he's able to locate Aguero dropping off ahead of Koscielny, and he plays the ball into Aguero, who flicks it over Iwobi for Raheem Sterling. Now you have to watch Aguero because he's able to stay on the outside of Koscielny. And what happens now, Sterling's able to run past Iwobi. He's able to go onto the outside of Lichtsteiner and play that ball through the box for Aguero, who initially clipped the ball out to him ahead of Koscielny, but was now on the outside running in to tap his effort into the net. And that puts City up 3-1. Arsenal try to turn to changes in Denis Suarez and Aaron Ramsey, moving to a 4-3-3, but they were unable to force Ederson into quality saves. They struggled to create chances. They were set up to disrupt City. They fell behind extremely early, got back into the game, but they were unable to deal with the fact that although they were compact, they couldn't really offer any supply to Lacazette or Aubameyang. And as they dropped off deeper, City were still able to get in behind Monreal, and they were able to get in behind Lichtsteiner. And this wasn't the greatest performance from Arsenal, whereas City ensured that they found a different tactic by moving from a back four to a back three in possession, and were able to see off Unai Emery's men to win the tactical battle and now move 2 points in behind Liverpool. But let me know what you guys think. Will Arsenal finish in the top four this season? And what about City? If they continue to play ahead of Liverpool, will Liverpool crumble based off the fact that City are finding ways to win these games? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.